Welcome back to the Hard Pull. I'm your host, Stu.
And I'm Kyle.
And today we are wrapping up things with Time Spiral. We're doing our part 3, which is going to be the money cards.
Indeed, we are talking about the top 10 most valuable cards from this set as dictated by, the players on the market.
And the ding sound.
And the ding sound.
And the dings. You're going to hear a lot of that in this episode. We finally got sound effects, so
we're having a lot of fun.
We're having too much fun with them, but we will keep it to a minimum at very best. But we will wait no further. So, Kyle?
I'll go ahead first. All right, so our number 1 here for the set is going to be Gemstone Caverns.
Now that was an entrance.
That was a $45 card. That's pretty expensive. Excuse me. Gemstone Caverns. This is a legendary land. If Gemstone Caverns is in your opening hand and you're not playing first, you may begin the game with Gemstone Caverns in play with a luck counter on it. If you do, remove a card in your hand from the game. Then you can tap it to give you 1 colorless, or if Gemstone Caverns has a luck counter on it, instead add 1 mana of any color. So, look, do I get how this card could be, a big benefit in certain situations? Yes, a very, very narrow set of circumstances. Like you have to be not playing first, and you have to have this in your opening hand. But otherwise, I don't get it. I'm really stumped on why this card would be valuable at all.
Okay.
I don't get it.
Okay, really?
Really.
Did you read the card?
Yeah, I read it.
Did you understand the card?
Of course.
Then how are you still confused?
You're gonna have to tell me, man. I know. I'm like, yeah. Okay. No, tell me. Explain it. I don't
All right.
get it.
So this is a card that would come into play. It has the Chancellor effect. It has the Ley Lines effect, where it's like this card can come into play before you've effectively even had a turn, right?
Okay.
So what's the advantage to that? There's a lot of advantage. This doesn't count as a land drop per turn. This is also any color of mana. This means on your opponent's turn, you could go ahead and use something like a Swan Song. That's kind of big for them having a turn 1 play. They go ahead, they turn 1. Okay, Sol Ring will say if they're not playing CEDH and they don't play all this other stuff out with it, they go ahead and just have like a modest turn. You being able to mess that up when it's not even your first turn is really big in the game.
Or the other 99% of the time, it could just be a really garbage, crappy card.
Or it could be a land that still produces mana. It doesn't become a null card. It's the same reason why we see the Ley Lines. The Ley Lines, like Ley Line of, what's the blue one?
Oh, Ley Line of Anticipation.
Anticipation, right? Now that card versus Vidalcan Orrery. Why would you use that card? It can be for free. It doesn't count towards the cost. That means also when you're with this land on your first turn, you're starting out with 2 mana instead of 0.
Right. Well, it basically means you're taking you essentially went first because you played with an additional land to start. I mean that's fine, but what long term? What difference does that make?
Kyle, one day when my infinite wisdom is bestowed upon you, you will see the light.
All right, whatever. I don't get it. I really don't understand.
You can't say all right and then blow a whistle. All right, you don't get it. I get it. Viewers, please tell us why he should care about this card.
I'd love to know.
And he's not even joking. He doesn't get it.
No. It's bad. It's just bad.
Oh my God, Kyle. Oh my God. Okay, moving on.
Let's move on to something that's not bad.
Move on to number 2. We are going to be looking at a land here, another land called Vesuva. Now, this land is coming in for the pretty price of around $26 when we took this value in. And what this land does is, when it comes into play, you may choose a land in play. And if you do, Vesuva comes into play tapped as a copy of the chosen land. So this is pretty much a clone for lands. And the reason why this is so good is, 1, you can become any opponent land. Like we see something like a Thespian Stage and stuff like that. That's pretty nice. It takes a little bit of mana. This, like Thespian Stage, also can go really, really well with a combo with what card?
Yeah, Dark Depths.
Dark
obviously.
Depths. Because what Dark Depths is infinitely known for is like, all right, you can get a really big giant creature out that is strong, flying, powerful, and indestructible. But there's counters on there, and you have to remove those counters. When this enters play, it becomes a copy of it. However, it doesn't get the counters with it, meaning you get the creature instantaneously. That is part of the reason why this is so powerful. But also, we see more and more powerful lands that players have access to. Like, if you want to think OG, we got Gaia's Cradle. We get a little bit newer, we have Cabal Coffers. If you want to get even newer than that, we have the Flip Lands, we have Nykthos, we have a whole bunch of other things that can just give you immense value. So why not, instead of buying the card yourself, just have one that can be that if you need it to.
Exactly, and that's why this is such a great card. However, you do have to be careful because Vesuva only enters the battlefield as a copy of something that is already in play. So like, this is a problem. For example, I was actually playing with this the other day when one of my opponents used Attempt with Discovery to let us all get a land from our deck. He, of course, went ahead and grabbed Cabal Coffers and Urborg as was his deck. I laughed to myself, saying, "Ha! I'm gonna get my Vesuva off of this, and I'm gonna get my own Cabal Coffers with an Urborg out." And I'm gonna be going nuts.
But they all enter at the same time.
Exactly. Since they all enter at the same time, those are not technically on the battlefield yet. So I would have had to copy something that was already in play. I was very sad about this. But you do have to be careful of timing with this card.
But it's something where a Thespian stage could fall and with the void of that. But again, this also helps you if you're in trouble with certain things. Like if you only have one land of a certain type that you would want to keep, like a Scavenger Grounds, or if you want to go ahead and get a Bojuka Bog off again. This is something that can just work well with your own stuff. Honestly, it's like whatever land you have, whatever the best land you have, think of it, you have two of them.
Yeah, or whatever the best land in play is, period.
Exactly.
You have another one.
Let them do the work, you get the reward.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
moving on to number 3 here. We're kind of sticking with the theme here. It's another land, Academy Ruins. Indeed, yes. You should absolutely have
love
that sound
that.
effect
We are
there.
going to keep doing this.
This is a $23 card, and for very good reason. We have another legendary land here, which taps to give you 1 mana of any color. Oh, well, I'm sorry, one colorless mana, I should say. And then we also can tap it, give 1 of any color and a blue, to put target artifact from your graveyard on top of your deck. Now this card, I think most people are probably already familiar with this. This is one of those Commander format staples that everybody pretty much has to have. Buried Ruin is the extreme budget version of this card.
Or Sequester Statue.
Yeah, both of which are good, but nowhere close to as good as this card, even though this has the color requirement added onto it. But time has proven that this is one of the best lands in the game. Constant, cheap artifact recursion is extremely powerful, and a land that comes into play and immediately can do that or just give you mana. What's not to love about that?
Well, this and Volroth Stronghold, which one's better? It's actually pretty hard to play.
It really is.
Yeah, hard to say. But more and more throughout the game, we see how strong artifacts are. We constantly have to keep them in check because, well, they are just so good and they're useful in every deck.
Yep.
So as long as you're running blue, you would really want to use this card. It's really good even as a safety measure against something like Mill. It's good for getting recurable value with something like if you just lost, like a Wayfarer's Bauble, a Solemn Simulacrum, a Burnished Heart, or just if you lost some sort of piece that you don't want to, like a Soul Ring.
Exactly.
It's really good for what it does. It's low costed, and you don't have to sacrifice the land like you typically do with a Buried Ruin or a Sequestered Stash. This is just something, it's like, all right, if you have extra mana lying around and you want something, you can get it. So
pretty great, really. I don't have much more to say about that.
And the only thing is you just can't get 2. It's legendary. However, that doesn't mean it's harder to tutor. It becomes easier.
Easier, yeah.
So moving on to number 4. This is a card that is pretty awesome. It is called Gauntlet of Power. Now, this is a $21 card for an artifact that's a 5 mana, and it's all generic. As Gauntlet of Power comes into play, choose a color. Creatures of that chosen color get +1/1. And whenever a basic land is tapped for mana of the chosen color, its controller adds 1 mana of that color to his or her mana pool. So this is a great card for many different reasons. If you're in a monocolored deck, this is something that you would ideally want because you're probably going to get more reward out of this card than your opponents will.
Yeah.
Just for the fact, like, yes, your opponents might get a mana boost for some of their basic lands. However, if they aren't using a lot of basics, they probably aren't. you'll be the one getting that kind of reward.
Yeah, this is kind of see, it's ironic because Caged Sun, I think, is much better than this, and it's for a fraction of the price. This is kind of the Caged Sun for people who want, I guess, a discount and don't mind maybe helping other people. But still, I'd almost rather play the Caged Sun and make sure nobody else gets that advantage but me. So I don't necessarily get the appeal of that.
Well, Caged Sun costs one more additional mana, so it does take another turn of build-up and stuff like that, making it a little harder to get. However, Caged Sun is tutorable by something like Treasure Mage, where this wouldn't be in that regard. Again, if you've ever seen anybody using a Distorting Lens, which is like the one that goes ahead and makes it so that lands go ahead and produce another mana for the thing that is imprinted.
Extra planar
lens. I'm sorry, not Distorting Lens. You would typically find this in the same deck, just for the fact that it's like, all right, you're going to go ahead and you're going to have a lot of basic lands. You're going to be trying to get that mana ramp up like that. So it's not so counterintuitive like you would think, like what you're saying. I mean, I get what you're saying. You don't want to give your opponents an inch, and you're typically right with that. However, it's basic lands. It's not just any land, and that's what's kind of the saving grace for this card in Commander.
Yeah, it might be. I don't know. It's all right, certainly. But...
And you know, we will do a fun little poll. Bam, up here. Which one would you rather? Would you rather Caged Sun or would you rather Gauntlet of Power? Let us know. Let us figure out exactly where the community lies on this, or just tell us down in the comments below. But moving on to our next card, Kyle.
Yes, number 5. For the price of $21 here, we have, sticking with the theme, yet another land, Swarmyard. Now, this is a very interesting one. It comes into play untapped and gives you 1 colorless mana, like we've seen already, or you can tap it to regenerate target insect, rat, spider, or squirrel. So, again, I think a lot of these cards are so expensive, mostly because they've just never been reprinted.
Sure.
So this one, I have yet to figure out why this card merits such a huge price tag for completely irrelevant creature type support.
It's not completely irrelevant, Kyle, and you know that.
I mean, well, it is growing slowly over time, more relevant. However, because like, you know, insects, I don't know about that. Rats are a pretty good deck already.
And?
Spiders are getting there, slowly but surely. Squirrel, whatever.
There are squirrel decks, don't you give me that. You were the one that was going all crazy about squirrel cards when we were showing them in other sets.
Well, that
means you're just a little nuts.
They're just fun.
But yeah, all right, Regenerate is a very powerful effect. So powerful that they've kind of stopped making it. So that means that might be part of the reason why we won't see this card printed again.
And having it at will on a land is really pretty good for basically no cost.
Well, Yavimaya Hollow, right? That's a card that we see with an outrageous price tag onto it, and being able to go ahead and make any creature regenerate. Now, what Regenerate does is anytime a creature would die via combat damage, burn damage, something associated with damage, pretty much anything that would destroy it, it wouldn't be destroyed. It would just be tapped, and it's still there.
Right.
Being able to protect yourself or being able to protect your creatures with stuff like that is very big. Does your creature need to attack to have an effect? Okay, this is a way as like an insurance measure against that.
Yeah.
Does your creature need to make sure like something happens? Like, this is a great way to keep your commander alive and a variety of other things like that. And the fact that it's on a land, you don't have to waste a spot in your deck and everything else like that. And also, a lot of cards don't say all creatures can't be regenerated, like we see with Wrath of God. So
older cards do, but
older cards do, but they aren't as printed as often. So this is a great way to combat newer cards with you having an old school advantage.
This also works very well with the new like 5-color changeling type decks, like a Morphon that we've talked about a lot. But I don't know, like this is just weird because like I think it's probably just because it's, you know, not printed a lot that it's this expensive. However, if any one of these tribes ever become actually like a relevant force, I think the value will shoot through the roof on this thing.
100%.
For good reason. It's very good, really.
And it doesn't come into play tapped. Like, that's a big thing. If this came into play tapped and it only regenerated something, it'd be less playable. But the fact that it does give you mana, it isn't tapped, sure, it's colorless, but it still works. And I think also the reason it is colorless is because, well, is this a green card, a black card? A white card?
Anything.
Yeah, it works for any of those. So it just happens to be a commander that happens to be in this tribe. You'd want it.
Yeah.
So moving on to our number 6. Now this is a card that I've been dying to put into a deck. It is called Angel's Grace. Now this card's around 20 bucks. It is an instant that costs 1 mana and it is only a single plains. And it reads, you can't lose the game this turn and your opponent can't win the game this turn. Until the end of the turn, damage that would reduce your life to less than 1 reduces it to 1 instead. But if that also wasn't the best thing about this card, I'm going to use that horn again. It's got Split Second, and what Split Second does is, as long as this spell is on the stack, players can't play spells or activate abilities that aren't mana abilities, which means that this can't be countered, it can't be stopped, they can't do anything to make it so that for this turn you can't lose. And now, this card isn't as great as it used to be back in the day because you could still potentially lose, actually.
In fact, that's one very easy way of getting around this card.
Well, in fact, milling out. Also, if they have a way to constantly keep like using Triskelion to kill you, as soon as this turn ends, they'll go ahead and use that effect.
And it's the same thing with Infect. Yeah, if you have 10 poison, as soon as your turn ends, you're dead anyway.
Yeah, so there are a handful of ways where this will buy you a turn. Maybe that might make it so you don't lose. Maybe you're just prolonging the inevitable and now you're just hanging on for second place because everyone's dying at the same time.
Yeah, I think this is mostly a like sideboard card, I think, for formats like, you know, Modern or Vintage Legacy, those kind of things. That's where this card gets most of its value. I don't see this showing up in Commander very much at all, really.
This is actually kind of funny. You could do a little stupid combo with this, making it so that, all right, you go ahead, you have, you know, what's the not Aether Hub? It's the Aether Flux Reservoir.
Yeah.
All right, you go ahead, you play this, right? You just use Aether Flux Reservoir, you kill everyone. You can't lose. Your life total goes below 0 and all that other stuff. And at the end, if for some reason something goes wrong, ping yourself. You lose 1, but your life total is below 1. Now you go back to 1.
I don't think that works actually, because you would have to have the 50 life that you need. You have to have 50 life to pay 50 life. So if you have 0 life, you can't pay 50 life.
All right, maybe you couldn't kill everyone. However, let's say if you have...
If you just have 50 life, though, and you go to 0, like you could potentially just win if you're facing one person. Like,
sure.
It could work.
But you could also make it so that you would get 1 life back. You can go ahead and preserve yourself just a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm thinking of this for 2 seconds. But it also can save you in a variety of ways. It can save you from, like, again, big army coming at you. No. Like, it's almost like a fog.
Yeah, almost, yeah.
Almost like a fog for white, but which they already have one. So it's just decent. The thing that really makes it shine is the Split Second.
Yeah, agreed. Split Second, again, very, very powerful ability.
So moving on to number 7.
All right, number 7 here, going to red, actually. One of my favorite colors in the game. For $15, we have an instant called Reiterate. So this is 3 mana, 1 colorless, double red, and it has the buyback ability, meaning that if you pay an extra 3 mana when you cast it, you can put it back in your hand as it resolves instead of putting it into the graveyard. Copy target instant or sorcery spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. So again, this is a very straightforward twin cast or reverberate sort of, copy spell.
Sure.
However, one of the reasons this has a big advantage over other similar spells, other than the buyback, which obviously is pretty good, is that you can copy anybody's spell. It doesn't just have to be yours. We're seeing more and more it has to be the spell you control.
Yes.
This doesn't have to be that, and you can play it again at any time. Very powerful card.
Yeah, the reason for that is like, okay, somebody plays Cyclonic Rift and they're feeling good. All right, for just 6 mana, I'll copy it, and then you also have the same problem.
Exactly, and if you have any kind of discounts like available for your instants or sorceries at all, that buyback is going to be even less, because it counts toward the actual price of the card.
It's really good. Again, like we've been saying in Commander, Singleton format, being able to use the same card again is good.
Yeah.
You have another resource that you can always use it. And for only 3 generic mana, sure, you have to have it at the time that you cast this card, but you know that because this is in your hand, so you will plan accordingly to that. If you really have to use this card, you will. It'll feel bad if you can't buy it back, but at some point you will let it go, and that's not the worst thing. You definitely got your value out of that card.
Agreed. I mean, I don't have too much more to say about this card, really, other than great value. Also, I have plenty of this card. I did not realize it was a money card. I better get rid of my copies now.
Save me one. I'll be fine with that. But moving on to our number 8.
All right.
We are looking at a card called Nether Traitor. Now this is about 13 bucks. This is a creature spirit that has a 1/1 body for 2 black mana. It has haste, shadow, and whenever another creature is put into your graveyard for play, you may pay 1 black mana, and if you do, return this creature from your graveyard into play. And shadow, for those who don't know it, when this creature can only attack. This creature can only be blocked by other creatures with shadow, and it can also only block creatures that have shadow. So it kind of puts it in its own little separate lane of combat, if that makes sense. So this card is a little guy that's going to go ahead and make sure that it keeps chipping away at life. It's going to enter and keep gunning and running and hitting as hard as it can, and if it happens to go away in some sort of spot removal, board wipe that just happens to hit it, you can easily bring it back for just 1 mana.
Yeah, things that bring themselves back from the grave, like Gravecrawler, Bloodghast, are some of the more obvious examples. Always good. And this is a very similar kind of thing with even some advantages over those.
Totally.
Bloodghast is the one that can give itself haste, but only if somebody has 10 or less life. This has haste all the time, so it's great to have a hasty, unblockable threat in a deck with dedicated like sacrifice engines. So not only do you have fodder that you can consistently bring back, but like you said, it'll keep chipping away at people's life totals because it can't block anything. Why wouldn't you just attack with it all the time?
Honestly, this card feels like it should have red in the cost just for the fact that it has haste. You don't really see a lot of black creatures with haste.
No, yeah, it depends. Sometimes there are, but
Old
yeah,
school,
usually
sure,
not.
but moving forward now, you really don't. So the fact that this has haste is kind of something that's kind of big, actually.
Yeah.
It's not even like it has to go through hoops like we were saying with the Ghast.
And I mean, just 1 mana, whenever any other creature dies, basically, 1 mana to bring this back. Like, even tokens that count for this ability.
It's so simple.
Great.
It's always on the field. It has to be exiled. That's pretty
Yeah.
much the only way to really deal with this. And honestly, it feels bad wasting a Sword of Plowshares or, a Path to Exile on this. It's like, all right, I just can't take this anymore.
Yeah,
But
sometimes you might have to, though, because it is such a great value card.
it is. But moving on to number 9.
Number 9 on this list, we're going to, for $10, Safi Eric's Daughter.
I'm so glad you read that.
This is a legendary creature, and going back to the Selesnya color pair, it costs green and white to play. Legendary human scout, too. Interesting types there. Sacrifice Safi Eric's Daughter. When target creature is put into your graveyard from play this turn, return that card to play. And it's a 2/2 for 2, which is always pretty solid. Like I said, very solid card overall. Can actually, value-wise, create a lot of loops with a lot of different creatures, and that's where the main value of this is, especially because it can be your commander. So you have one piece of a combo in the command zone at all times. I haven't actually seen that many people playing with this as a commander, but I feel like it'd be a pretty good deck, honestly.
I've seen a handful of decks floating around tapped out where people have made this the commander, and like it almost seems like it's a gimmick. However, once you start like really looking into it and seeing how it works, it isn't. And actually, that's the very funny part about this. It's almost like Blink deck without blue.
Yeah.
And it works pretty well. Like, go ahead, like, let's play some sort of big creature, sack it, use this creature's effect, bring it back out, and then also bring your commander back out, keep rinsing and recycling it.
Yeah, it's like a Sun Titan or a Protean Hulk. There's so many ways that you can abuse this card. Karmic Guide, Revelark,
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so easy to go ahead and do this. It just keep going infinite. If you need another backup, it works. Good in the 99, good on its own. It works in tribes, it works without tribes, and it's just, it's honestly solid.
Yeah, it's a human, too. Humans are getting more and more support these days, so is this going to be a good human commander? Possibly. It could be.
I would not make a tribal style off of this one, though.
I mean, it could be, but yeah, there's a lot of different things you can do with this. Very versatile card.
But moving on to a card that is tribal-based, we're going to be wrapping up with number 10. Now, this is a card called Plumanic Sliver. And yes, if Sliver's in the name, you hear the universal groan. For around $8, you can have this beautiful, wonderful creature right there. It costs 5 mana, 3 generic, and double white for a Sliver that has a 3/3 body. And it reads, all Slivers have flying, and if this creature will be put into the graveyard, you may put it on top of its owner's library instead. So this Sliver here stands a little bit out of the regard of a higher level than the other slivers, because this one gives 2 effects where almost all of them give 1, and this is taking out the legendary slivers of that category. This one gives flying, which sure, there's 2 other slivers that give flying, but being able to make it so that whenever a creature would die, it doesn't go to the grave is kind of a big deal, especially in slivers. Instead of having to run other cards to go ahead and recur slivers back from the grave and lower your creature count down, this can go ahead and make it so, sure, it's on the top of the deck, but the stuff I lost, I want to get back. So I don't mind if it takes a turn or 2 to go ahead and dig through this pile. It's fine.
The other alternative you have, of course, is the 5-color Sliver Hive Lord that makes all of your slivers indestructible.
Right.
That, of course, is not totally perfect, but it's very, very good. This is a nice backup for that, because in a tribal strategy, any kind of tribal strategy, slivers especially, are very weak against board wipes. Because the whole point is to establish some kind of synergistic tribal engine, and as soon as they get rid of a few of your key cards, you're toast.
Yeah.
So with something like this that can preserve your cards, even if you are stuck drawing things that aren't lands and that you already had for a couple of turns, it's still a heck of a lot better than having them in the graveyard and probably not being able to get them back.
Yeah, I mean, creature recursion isn't so hard, but however, they usually aren't slivers. And if they are slivers, it's like unearth and you only get the effect for a turn.
Right.
Sure, that might be all you need, but for the contingency that this card provides, oh yeah, it's worth it.
Yeah, and again, all slivers have flying. Like automatic evasion for all your creatures is really great on its own. So even if this were, just 5 mana for that or like either of these abilities, it might be worth it. Both of them together, like, holy crap, is this thing powerful.
Yeah, it's pretty good, honestly. And I have a sliver deck. I have no problem with this card coming out. And you would think that, like, all right, sure, clumping the top of the deck is bad. And you're not wrong in that regard. However, you don't have to put them on the top of the deck. You can let certain ones fall to the grave and other ones that you need to keep go to the top, so you can keep that kind of synergy flowing through.
Right, and that actually works very well with some tribal cards like the Herald's Horn,
Sure.
drawing an extra card every turn from the top of your deck, or Descendant's Path to play a free card. There are a lot of ways top decking is actually very good, so...
Yeah. And for this being old school, it's definitely not aged poorly at all.
No, very, very good still.
But that is going to be the final card that we talk about from Time Spiral. That is the end of the money. Those are the ones that we couldn't pick as saying, hey, recognize them. They are hidden gems. They aren't hidden gems. They are very notorious cards for what they do.
Yeah, that about does it for this video. So of course you can find us on social media. If you're looking for more content, we're on Reddit. We have all our deck lists on Tapped Out. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and you can find them all at the handle The Card Pool.
And also we are associated with TCG Player. Description down below, there's a link. If you go ahead and click it, it'll take you to their website. And before you go ahead and close that shopping cart and purchase all those lovely, lovely cards that we've shown you today, make sure you do that, because then it lets them know that, hey, we sent you there, you like what we do, and they can go ahead and support our channel, making it so that we can keep doing this stuff, which would be sweet. But until then, I'm Stu.
And I'm Kyle.
And we'll see you next time at the Card Pool. I think they'll make more slivers anytime soon?
Well, we'll see. I don't know. You never know.
You kind of know.